Hello, this is Anthony Melf with the NEPA Rainbow Alliance, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Savannah Drummond. I am the founder of Creating Change for the People. We're a community-based organization in Scranton with branches in both Honesdale and Bradford County. Our main focus is educating people in the community, offering free sources of education, and mutual aid, community outreach, and just all-around togetherness in the community as a whole with everyone.
Hi, my name is Kira Kinsman. I'm a board member of the William Way LGBTQ Community Center in Philadelphia and a former board member of Equality PA. I'm also an architect in Wilkes-Barre in Philadelphia and with a small firm and working in both places.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for being with us. In honor of National Coming Out Day, we wanted to speak with various voices in the LGBTQ community, especially voices anchored in Northeastern Pennsylvania. So, broad topic, broad umbrella, but we'll start with Savannah.
Okay.
Savannah, do you mind sharing when you hear coming out story, what comes to mind for you in your experience?
I don't feel like I've had one, like, honestly, because for me, it kind of just like, I just realized one day that, I don't know, I was like not I don't want to say society norm, but not what everyone expected me to be. And then I was like, oh, okay, so this is how it is. Cool. So I wouldn't say I had like a direct like coming out story, but I will say family wise, like it's been like a struggle with them a little bit, getting them to understand like who I am, what I am, how I feel about things, how I look at myself and my relationships with other people.
So when you identified as LGBTQ, you kind of just realized like a self-revelation. It sounds like it was very much more casual, kind of just something that came to mind. When did you feel that you needed to express that and like share that with someone, it sounds like with the family?
Well, I've always been, I'm actually very new to the community itself. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. This is my first year being 100% acceptive of, I would say that, of who I am and how I feel about myself and the way I feel toward other people. So, like, as far as the LGBTQ plus, like, the labels kind of like really overwhelm me. So I kind of just like genuinely go by queer for everything, like even like gender and as well as like sexuality and stuff. And like I said, I'm very new. So if I misspeak or say something that doesn't seem 100% accurate, I'm very sorry.
No, that's okay. And I'm really glad you said that because labels, you know, there's definitely, it's a twofold thing, right? So when we identify our sexual orientation, our gender identity, we tend to feel like we have to be put in a box, right? And it doesn't need to be that way. So personally, from my own experience, I think it's best just to choose the words that feel like they best represent you. And there's no quiz or test at the end of it. I also want to say welcome. You're going to get your membership card in the mail. Yes. It should come in 6 to 8 weeks. So be on the lookout for that. And maybe we'll turn to Kira and perhaps we'll just kind of go back and forth here. Kira, do you mind sharing a little bit about coming into your own and how you first identified as LGBTQ?
Sure. So, you know, for me, it was more a coming out process than a coming out story per se. And so I kind of knew when I was, I knew when I was 9 I wanted to be an architect, and I knew when I was 13 that I was gender variant in some way. And I actually tried for 45 years to make that go away. And of course it cannot, you know, and it took me a long time to come to acceptance of self, you know. I think that, you know, along the way, I was married. I raised 3 children. 30 years ago, I founded a company with 12 people. And the deeper I got into all of the circumstances in my life, the more grounded and rooted I became in a life, the harder the prospect of transition came to appear to me. So I mean, I would drive down to Philadelphia, 10 years ago, and I got to a certain point where I realized I wasn't going to be able to keep up this fight. I couldn't keep putting my fingers in the dam. It was going to come in on me. I'd drive down to Philly and I'd think about, driving into a bridge abutment at 140 miles an hour because I couldn't think of any other way to manage it. Eventually, I got good therapy and I did group therapy, which is a fascinating experience. And then I began to work my way into acceptance of self. And one day I woke out of bed at 5:30 in the morning and I said to myself, I'm starting my transition. So, that happened. I spent 5 years. I would take people out for a slice of pizza at lunch, give them a back door so that there was no alcohol or anything like that, And I would tell my story and they always say, you need to get the word transgender out in the first 3 or 4 sentences or people think that you're telling them that you're dying, So,
in a way.
and I began to build my circle of allies and my orbits until I got to a point where I thought that I had enough, that I had a steady platform to step out onto. And so December 3rd of 2018, I showed up at my office in Wilkes-Barre for the first time wearing a dress. That was fun. My staff was ready for it, my partner was ready for it, and all of my clients were ready for it. And I'd just like to say that, point of view of all the fear that we have of becoming who we really are, authentically and so forth, although I have some difficulty with that word because I sort of felt authentic before my transition too, but I think that point of view of all those fears, I went to a client of mine in Wilkes-Barre and I explained what was about to happen. And it was a pretty significant project for me. And this client looked at me and said, I really only have one question for you. And I said, what is that? And he said, are you going to finish my building? And I said, yes, I am. So I think that, sometimes we make the hurdles seem larger than they really are. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of acceptance out there if we know how to ask for it. And I think that Northeastern Pennsylvania is actually not the place that a lot of people fear will be a difficult place within which to find acceptance. I found a tremendous amount of acceptance here. In fact, I have to say, hundreds of people know about my transition. I haven't lost a friend. But I took my time because I believe that when you transition, everybody in your life transitions with you. And I think it's really interesting that Savannah identifies as queer because I'm a binary trans woman, right? And so, I kind of reified the binary. And when I moved to Philadelphia, my sister said to me, where are you going to live? And I said, I'm not really sure. I was thinking about maybe Point Breeze. She's like, oh, you can't go down there. She's like, that's where all the kids are. And you're just you're too binary for that, And my sister's a physician. So she's entitled to an opinion. She was half joking when she said it, but in a certain sense, it's kind of true. And I think it's just amazing how young people are kind of dismantling the gender binary in so many ways. And it gives me so much faith and hope for the future.
Absolutely. That is really well said. And something I wanted to zero in on early in your self-discovery process on that life journey, I enjoyed that you said that you felt authentic before the transition.
Yeah.
And you, of course, feel authentic now. You mentioned the therapy that may have helped in coming to those conclusions, right?
Yeah.
And making those very important decisions about how you want to express yourself and your authentic self.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering for Savannah, for Kira, she sought out therapy and that helped her kind of really hone in on how she best identified. For you, is it something that, did you seek out any type of resources in the community? Was it something you read? Were there resources available?
Therapy is expensive, and I don't have insurance, so it's kind of off the table for now.
Right.
But I've always, since I was a kid and stuff like that, just been whatever the heck I want to do, I'm doing it. I don't care. People already hate me because the way I look. I'm already getting bullied for just going to school. I may as well do whatever I want, in the process. So, I never thought about my, I never really thought about sexuality until, middle school because I had a friend that was pansexual. And I never liked, girls. There's one girl in class that just... I still think about her. She's so pretty. That I just like I like was like in love with her all throughout high school and stuff like that. So that's like my first time. That's why I said this is my first year accepting, because I've always been like aware, but my mom and my family's they're not openly like homophobic or whatever, but they are like that religious thing. Like they'll say like, hey, like nice to meet you, and then come to me and be like, they're going to hell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, kind of thing. So that's why I say I don't really have like a story, because I've never fully said much. Like, she's completely aware. I don't speak to the other person involved in that pair. But, so I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting a little bit off track here.
No,
like my
you're
mind's,
fine.
I'm rambling.
No, thank you for sharing. Whatever you're comfortable with. And
I'll
I'll clarify if there are any questions or anything that I ask that feels too private or too personal, you do not have to answer.
I'm an open book. I just talk about anything and everything. The more open we are and the more comfortable we are with being open, the more everything's going to be like future wise, and just with everyone, we have to have conversations like this. So I'm okay with everything. But like I said, I get nervous, I ramble a little bit. But long story short, I guess, I'm so sorry.
No, you're doing great.
Your original question again?
No, and I think what I was trying to ask, and I hope I asked
can
it.
pick up off of this. I can
Yeah,
roll with
let's
this.
roll.
Yeah,
we got you. Go ahead,
actually,
Kira.
I just want to say that, like, you know, therapy is like a huge problem in the cost of therapy. Okay, and I mean, not to digress too much into, you know, outside of sort of the scope of this discussion, but you know, I mean, I've watched what has happened to American capitalism over the last 30 years that I've been in business, and I have personal opinions about all kinds of ways that I believe the system doesn't serve people anymore. And access to health care is one of them, and access to mental health care is, you know, still stigmatized, of course, in this country in particular, and unavailable to people. And I think that, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens after COVID, because I mean, we're on the brink of a massive healthcare crisis in this country, and it's kind of like, why doesn't the insurance reimburse you? You know, so I stand so much in awe of young people who, like yourself, Savannah, who can just be like, you know what, like I'm just going to be me. Yeah. And it, you know, damn the torpedoes and let the chips fall where they may, or whatever it is, you know. I actually use these expressions in my office that I realize the 30-year-olds in my office have no. I'm like, did you catch that reference? They're like, no, I had no idea what you're talking about. But you know, I think that, you know, it's really interesting in northeastern Pennsylvania. I was thinking about it on the way up in the car here today, and you know, small towns like Wilkes-Barre, and Wilkes-Barre is a bigger small town, and so is Scranton, but smaller towns are where families find themselves a lot, and it's about your neighborhood and going to the Friday night football game and going to the Wednesday night basketball game and going out for pizza with your family and that kind of thing. And we all sort of have these childhood memories that get built in communities like this. And of course, parents, you know, are protective of their children. And I parented 3 kids, and it's kind of like you worry, like, oh my gosh, is something going to happen that's going to derail their life? Are they going to have to face discrimination in some way? You know, and that's like, what a white person's question anyway. But it's like, you know, are they going to have to face some kind of challenge that we don't foresee at this moment in time? And so there's this tremendous kind of urge to conformity and difficulty processing difference. So, you know, so many young people, not Savannah so courageously, but so many young people will wait until they leave home to sort of express who they are, you know, in a way, or begin to discover who they are, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that can put you in a place where you think to yourself, well, northeastern Pennsylvania is kind of like a really rough spot to be queer, right? And I think that maybe a little bit, but also not so much, you know.
I know for me, like what you were saying, like how like a lot of people wait till after they leave. Like for me, it was kind of like that. Like I'm 21, and I lived in Scranton until I was, I think, like sophomore year of high school. Then I moved to Syracuse, New York. I was pretty much on my own out there. I was like homeless and stuff, graduated, whatever, did what I had to do, whole other story. Yeah. Came back. So like, that's why I said this year is like the first year for me to feel 100% okay with who I am, because I have like bipolar, and I have like PTSD and probably something else that I'm not 100% sure about. And it took me like I had a really hard time just accepting myself. Like, yeah, I wore whatever I wanted. I was very like, they already don't like me, so I'm gonna do whatever I want kind of thing. But for me, as far as my like sexuality and even like my individuality, like gender and stuff like that, took myself a while like to I don't want to say come out to myself, but kind of accept myself, like toward like the end of last year and stuff like that. And the beginning of this year, it's been full blown like, who gives a beep whatever thing, you know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna do it. So like I said, for myself, like my home thing was just really bad on my mental, so I didn't have time to figure out who I was or what I wanted because I struggled so much like from school and stuff like that. So I didn't like I couldn't like do any of that. So I mean, in a way, I didn't find out like me until about like probably like last year. Like after
If you mean last year when you were 20, right?
Yeah, like like after I got diagnosed like with like bipolar and stuff, I like my whole life changed because I was like, crap, like now I have reasons for why I'm so confused all the time, you know? So
But I think it's so interesting that you're like able at your age, okay, from my perspective, like I'm 62, right? It's so interesting that you're able to access these thoughts and feelings in yourself at your age, okay? I mean, to me, you seem terribly precocious and mature for your age. And I see that like in younger generations all the time. And I think that particularly your generation and maybe those who are in their early 30s or, you know, millennials and younger, right? Like, you know, Gen Z, whatever, like these are generations that have grown up really, really comfortable with social media. And so, you know, I think that there's a higher level of emotional intelligence about socialization, sort of just at a fundamental level, you know? And I think that builds empathy. This is my thought. And I think that, you know, I see more empathy in younger people and I see more acceptance of difference. And I just think it's awesome that you have found the strength and the power to be able to express who you are. And I can appreciate that you had challenges that probably provoked you to think hard about those kind of things at a young age. But, you know, I knew when I was trying on women's clothing when I was 13 without any understanding of what in the world was going on with me. I didn't hear the word transgender till I was 38. So I spent 25 years thinking that there was something really wrong. And like trans people, like, you know, gender identity has just been depathologized in the last 2 years by the American Psychiatric Association, whereas sexual orientation was depathologized 47 years ago. So the whole discussion around gender identity, nonconformity, gender fluid, you know, queer, however it is that you identify along this gigantic spectrum of things, of places, you know, is really fascinating, I think, to watch. And I just have to say, you know, in terms of my personal experience, I walk the streets of downtown Wilkes-Barre every day. Right now, I'm the architect for the new Wilkes-Barre High School, so I'm on this job site with dozens and dozens of men every day, and no one has ever made so much as like a comment behind my back or anything like that. So I really think that northeastern Pennsylvania is much farther along sociologically maybe than we give it credit for, you know?
Sorry, I was gonna say,
Yeah,
I find that
please
like
do.
interesting because I have like the opposite thing.
Okay.
Like I feel like I get so much negativity for like just like being like, you know, just the way I look. Like I'm black, I'm queer, I'm obviously like alternative. Like I have like everything. I'm a woman. Like everything stacked up against me. I feel like I'm just constantly dealt with like, especially since like I say like I like where I work and stuff. I've always worked in service too, and maybe that's why too. Maybe because like I feel like when you work in service, you have a lot of like negativity, like all like not all the time, but a lot of the time. So like for my end, I feel like, and like even like my friends and stuff like that, like there is like in like around our age group, there's a lot more like acceptance and stuff. But I know like for myself, like I've been met with like a lot of things, even what I was doing before this, which what I was doing before this, like in that like situation, in that group setting, when I told like them I was queer and stuff like that, like this one guy like gave me such a difficult time about it.
Yeah, sure.
Like he kept saying like, why don't you just decide? Like, I'm like, what do you mean just decide?
Right.
Like, what are we talking about here? Like,
Yeah, what is the choice? What is this binary choice you speak of?
Exactly. And like he was just, I think he was kind of offended because like he tried and I was like, no, kind of thing, and which that normally causes like some things with people. But I have a lot of situations like that. Like when I tell them about like my openness or how I look at it, I get a lot of negativity or like aggressive like questioning, not like, oh, like how so, or like why do you feel that way, or what does that mean? Like a lot of aggressive questioning.
So I think that that's kind of like to me that comes from the part of the smaller town experience where people live in fear of difference a little bit, right? And I think that you yourself, I don't want to put words into your mouth or presume to know your experience.
Just meet me today.
But my guess is that you live in a kind of intersectionality of discrimination. You're being a person of color, being black, and being queer, and being young, and being kind of living life large, as I believe you do. And I think that all of these things can make you a target for people's fears. Do you know what I mean? Particularly in America. And I have to say, in northeastern Pennsylvania, I think that not to sort of ignore the elephant in the room, but I feel like I live in Philadelphia half of my time. Philadelphia is a community that on a per capita basis, for every 1,000 people, there are many, many more people of color and black people, right? And when I come back up to northeastern Pennsylvania, the demographics are really, really different. And I can feel like like sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, everybody around me is just like ever so slightly racist, and I, that's the kind of stuff that I kind of try to approach in northeastern Pennsylvania. I don't want to become such a lightning rod that I get cooked,
I have no tolerance.
Yeah.
Right.
If someone says anything, I'm like, what'd you say? Like, I probably seem like I attack people a lot, but I just question people until they have no answers. And
Making
I'm like,
people
exactly.
aware of what they're saying.
Right. Well, like you'll see, like when like at age 62, I can only tolerate like 7-sentence conversations with people. So it's like there's that kind of thing. But I think that it's just interesting. It's great to be talking about all these kind of things.
Yeah.
I wish that these subjects were discussed even more openly in northeastern PA. I'm really, really fond of this community. Yeah, right.
That's what the whole organization I'm a part of does. Like we're here to keep them going because everyone did the protests and everything, and like that's like myself as well as many other groups too. Like we're based in Scranton. I'm from Scranton, but there's a lot of people in Wilkes-Barre and stuff like that too, doing the same thing we're doing everywhere to keep it here, so that we can keep this momentum and keep these conversations and keep these like divisions that we have, and like try to dissolve them.
Yes, I think that's
And I
awesome.
commend both of you for being a part of this conversation to keep the conversation going, right? And thank you, Savannah, for creating change for the people, because I think you're both right in that in order to affect change, that we have to have those difficult conversations. I was speaking with a friend and I'm like, these are really difficult subjects to talk about and there's a lot of awkwardness, right? Yeah. But unless we get awkward, unless we get uncomfortable, we're never going to make progress.
That's right.
So it's
We're never
really,
gonna be
really important.
uncomfortable.
Right, so that we can get comfortable, I guess, right? And I wanted to also just zero in on, if I may, I think you both talked about a few things in your coming out process and wherever you identify on that, right? However you want to frame it. And you talked about like feeling safe, feeling like Savannah, you mentioned your mental health, right? Like when you're at home, you weren't in a place, an environment that really allowed you to have those conversations with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important that, everyone comes out in their own time and that we're not all fortunate enough to have the ability to leave a toxic or unhealthy situation. So you have to kind of work within your means to stay safe and to stay healthy within your means. And I think that's really, really important. The other thing is that both of you left the area, found safe spaces.
We had to leave.
You left, but the important part is you came back, right? You returned to northeastern Pennsylvania, and perhaps the wave of change, the hope, is that as people leave and they expose themselves to new environments and other people and learn more, that they come back and then they make up the majority of the people here, so that we can all experience what you're experiencing, Kira, and that maybe there's less to fear than we realize just by having these conversations, that there are other people that live in northeastern Pennsylvania that are exposed and experienced and knowledgeable and want to be supportive and accepting.
I mean, I'm incredibly encouraged because, 20 years ago, this room wouldn't be here, and the people in it. That wouldn't have happened in Wilkes-Barre 20 years ago, I believe. But
That's
here
a
we
moment.
are today.
I think I want to recognize that's a moment, right? Wow.
But here we are.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're here, and
I
we're
was
proud.
maybe 20 years ago, so I wouldn't be a part of it. I was just, hanging out. But, yeah.
This is true. And I really appreciate both of you being here today. As we wrap up, do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share for anyone who's watching? So this is going to be promoted throughout northeastern Pennsylvania. Is there anything you'd like people to know as we move forward and we hope to elicit that change that we like to see in the world?
Well, I just would like to say really quickly that I am so incredibly fond of northeastern Pennsylvania, and I hope that whatever it is that I may have said tonight doesn't give the impression that I feel bad about my community. I love this town. I love northeastern Pennsylvania. I think that there's always room for improvement, and I think that particularly as it affects LGBTQ youth, I think that we all as a community have to be mindful of the young people and what they're telling us. But I feel that that's happening, so I'm really encouraged.
I am too, and I want to add here that, Kira, just knowing you a little bit before this conversation, that you really made it a point to, as you moved forward in your journey, that you brought everyone along with you, and they stayed.
Yeah.
And now you live
It's
both
very
in Wilkes-Barre, but also in Philadelphia. So you have chosen to keep that connection strong, and there's a lot more people supportive than we realize. And I think that's encouraging to maybe not always assume the worst, but be safe. But don't assume the worst, right?
Yes.
Savannah?
So my closing words or whatever it is it's just gonna be kind of what I've been wanting to say, but I know that I probably did not get out properly. I just wanted to touch on how we were talking about people bringing people along and stuff like that. I want to say how like I mentioned with my family and stuff like that, how my mom is and everything. She does accept me. It just took a lot of conversations. So because since people are gonna watch this and everything, for anyone who is worried about that, or worried about people in your life just not getting it, not being along for the ride, not wanting to be a part of it, like you said, the more uncomfortable conversations we have, the more you apply that pressure. Maybe not throw it in their face, but just slightly hit the pedal or whatever it is. They'll come around. They just don't have that experience. They don't understand, and they'll get it. Eventually, seeing you go through what you're going through.
Yep.
And then I also wanted to say, since I said I do identify as queer for all around, I don't really identify with a gender like that. I go by anything, whatever it is. I also wanted to mention, I know I'm new, but don't feel like you need to label yourself, just because that's what really messed me up, is that I felt like I had to, and I had a really, really difficult time. So just do what makes you happy, what makes you feel good. If someone's pressuring you to choose, be F you and F that, I'm me, I'm Savannah, this is me, hi, how's it going, kind of thing. I just really wanted to say that because that's something I wanted to get across, but I didn't know if I did.
I think you did really well.
That's awesome.
I think you said that really well,
that's
and
great.
words matter.
Thank
and
you.
I think they are tools for us to express ourselves, but not boxes to contain us. So thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Kira. It's an honor to be with both of you tonight, and
Such
I
a
really
pleasure.
appreciated
Thank you.
the conversation. Thanks.
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 Thank you.